Welcome to the Daily Exchange. I've got Tone Vays with me. Thanks for coming on the show.
Loving the Finder office. You guys are doing well. Look at this. It's awesome.
It's a good little setup. Some of you might not know, I think a lot of you might recognize Tone, but he's one of the, I would say, OGs in the space. He's been around a long time and definitely was one of the first on the scene doing YouTube videos a couple times a day, non-stop educating people about crypto. From when did you start?
So I spoke at my first conference in, I believe, May 2014.
Okay.
Was the first time I spoke publicly. Wrote a few articles on my blog before that. Right after that conference, I was picked up by Cointelegraph. They were just launching, so I was one of the first writers at Cointelegraph. After that, started doing some interviews, more conference speaking, became a regular YouTuber on the World Crypto Network YouTube channel sometime in late 2014, early 2015. And I think in October 2016, I launched my own YouTube channel.
Okay, and that's the same one you're still using?
Yeah, same one. So Tone Vays on YouTube, yeah.
What kind of stuff do you cover there?
Oh, so I still have to find my one direction. So the problem is that I do too many things. My most popular show is, of course, the Price of Bitcoin show. So trading, technical analysis, where's the price going? So that show gets the most eyeballs. Not why I came into the space. That was kind of my expertise, and something has to pay the bills and keep the lights on for everything else that I do in crypto. My other shows is we did a news show this morning. Used to do it every day. A little harder with my travel schedule. It keeps getting more and more insane. News show, a law show. Used to be every week. Now it's more like once a month or once every couple of months. Get together with a bunch of lawyers and we talk about all the insanity going on in the space. I think it's my most educational show. Occasionally I interview people as well. That show is called On the Record. And I have another show that I don't do as often these days called Crypto Scam, where I try to expose a lot of the fraud in the crypto space.
That's cool. That's probably like one of my favorite spaces because it's, I don't know, if you're new, it's really easy to get caught. But then once you kind of understand what's going on, you can more easily identify. Like Elon Musk tweets and then it's like, guess what? Elon Musk is doing an airdrop. You just have to send some Bitcoin to us and we send more Bitcoin back.
And then you realize it's not Elon Musk. Like,
no, it never was.
Man, like this Bitcoin itself is so revolutionary on so many levels that the world has not seen the kind of scams prior, because it was really hard to get your money before Bitcoin. Credit cards, you can call the credit card company, get the money back.
Yeah.
Bank transfers, have identity assigned. But with Bitcoin, the moment you send people Bitcoin, and you have no idea how many times it has happened to many people. Almost like you send Bitcoin to someone, and right after you send the button, you have this light bulb in your head.
Yeah, shouldn't have done that.
Wait a minute. Why did I just do that? Did I just get scammed? And most of the time, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And it's so strange how people realize it the moment they send the button, the moment they press the button. Because once you press the button and your Bitcoin goes somewhere, it's gone. You're never getting that back.
Yeah. It's probably like one of my favorite features on like the newer Trezors where you have to hold it down and it does like a little circle, and so you can kind of like you get that feeling a little bit early. That's really cool. I think it's funny you say like I don't do this show that often, but because you do so many different things, it actually ends up just being like endless.
Oh, there's something on my YouTube channel every day, but
and so you're at the moment, are you like a digital nomad? You just seem to, every time I see you, you're in a different city. What's your strategy? Like you've been in Australia for, is it 2 weeks now?
No, it's only been a week. I did a month in Australia about 15 months ago.
Okay.
It's only been a week in Australia, a little over a week, but I'm heading out tomorrow. I just came through Brisbane, Byron, and Sydney.
Good choice.
And I was in New Zealand right before. and I'm off to Bali next, I try to just set up a way to travel in one direction. Usually I go east coast of US to Europe, to Eastern Europe, to Asia, and then from Asia I go, around the world. Then either Mexico or West Coast, and then back to the East Coast.
Is that just for like a couple of months of the year? Are you normally based somewhere, or is this just like...
I'm not really based. I'm
not sure.
I split my time between New York and Las Vegas. Las Vegas, I have my main conference is in Las Vegas. It's going to happen in about a month. So Las Vegas is one of my bases of operations. New York is where my family is. My parents and other relatives are in New York. So I still come through New York a lot. A lot of my friends are there. I used to work there. So those two are my kind of homes, Vegas and New York. But 10 months a year I'm on the road. I've been doing this for a couple of years now. This year is going to be pretty bad as well. The world is big, guys. Like, it's really almost impossible to see it all, especially when you start so late. If I do have kids, I'll encourage them. Man, if you go to college, you don't have to go to college, but if you go to college, maybe spend your first year at your actual college and then to spend the rest of your years abroad, different countries. Like, I didn't start traveling till I was like 28, 29, and just a little bit on vacation. But the world is big. I'm off to Africa this year. I'm going to try to see China, Japan, countries I haven't been to yet. And all I've been doing is traveling for 2 years. So, but 2021, I want to take the year off. It's funny, for me, take the year off means not traveling. For most people, take the year off means they're going to do some traveling. For me, take the year off, not travel. I'm supposed to be a trader, haven't traded in years because of my travel schedule. Feeling very disconnected from the markets, kind of mistrading a little bit.
Yeah.
So I want to do that a little bit. So 2021, gonna do some trading.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're catching up on your travels at least. I guess, the reason that you're so popular online is because you've got a very clear view of what Bitcoin is. And I think there's loads of different ways we can chat about this. I think something that would be good to touch on would be the maximalism side of things. We don't have to go just there yet, but I think why Bitcoin? What are its key characteristics? For someone that's new, you can easily get overwhelmed in the amount of where do you start? Where do you start to learn about blockchain and Bitcoin to begin with to then have a chance at navigating this? What would be like the 0 to 100? This is why Bitcoin is still king, or isn't.
Man, it's hard. I think that the reason why I'm popular is because I have no filter. I just, tell the truth, and whether it helps me, hurts me, or it doesn't matter. And people respond to that. A lot of people resonate with the fact that I will give you my honest opinion. Don't ask stupid questions because you're going to get an answer you may not want to hear. I think that's the main reason why my channels are more popular than some of the others. But it is very hard. And people ask me, well, I'm new to Bitcoin. Where do I go to learn? And I don't even have a good answer.
Yeah. And
when they say, well, how come you don't build something for that? Because that's not really interesting to me. Me personally. I focus more on people that are not new to the space.
Yeah.
My channel, unfortunately, is not designed for new people.
Right.
I focus on people that are already in the space, and I focus on traders. So my target audience are Bitcoiners and people that are trading. So once you've learned the lessons, once you've been scammed a couple of times, then you start to really appreciate my channel.
Yeah.
But I don't have a good place to point people to if they are beginners. So
we've got loads of content on Finder. That's probably that's what the Crypto Finder side does. Not an intentional plug, but that to be fair, that is what we do. All sorts of different cryptos and coins and where to buy them. But I'll end that there. It's not why I'm here.
And so I'm a conference speaker. I speak at 30 to 40 conferences a year. And I really felt like the conferences were not doing a good job in educating about Bitcoin. And that's why I started my own.
Yeah.
And one of those conferences is literally called Understanding Bitcoin.
Right.
But it's also not designed for the very beginner. we'll add like a front day for the very beginner, but it's more designed for the person that has already decided to be a Bitcoiner. But now we teach them how to use Bitcoin properly,
Right.
how to use the privacy features, how to process your own transactions by running a node, how to help in the mining game by setting up a miner, how to use Lightning. So we teach the power features of Bitcoin to create an ultimate power user that really understands the power of Bitcoin after that person has already decided to be a Bitcoiner.
Right. How crucial is it that someone runs their own node and broadcasts their own node's transactions? Is that for everyone?
It's not. It's a hard question. I don't believe it's for everyone. It's for those that want to have a say. It's for is voting for everyone. Everyone votes, but how many people actually care?
Right.
Right? So this is more like if you're using Bitcoin and you really want to have a say in the future of Bitcoin, if you really care about Bitcoin other than it solves a problem for you, then you should learn how to run your own node and how to make sure Bitcoin continues doing what it's meant to do, which is unstoppable, censorship-resistant, unconfiscatable payments.
Right.
So if you want to help make that happen, you run your own node, but you should also learn and understand what you're doing. I would rather have less nodes, but all the people that are running those nodes understand what they're doing, than to have more nodes and people running them blindly.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think perhaps maybe you could explain where we've seen that in action, because I can think of a very good example with the user-activated soft fork, right? So maybe could you explain how that worked and why that, the actual ability to run nodes came into play?
Yes. So the way code changes. All right, let me back up a little bit. So for those that are a little bit new to Bitcoin, or for those that are wondering why is Tone a Bitcoin maximalist, this is a good transition.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm a Bitcoin maximalist is because I don't think that there's anything else in crypto that is decentralized, that is resistant to government or corporate force and entities. I believe that every project in the crypto space other than Bitcoin is either already controlled by a small number of people or could be easily controlled by a small number of people or could be taken over by a serious government entity by putting a small number of people in the room and telling them this is what you're going to do and here's how you're going to do it, and they don't really have a choice to say no.
Yeah.
So the possibility of, I believe most of them are already at that stage, but if they're not, it's not going to take much to put them at that stage. That's why I only believe in Bitcoins. But what makes Bitcoin this unstoppable, decentralized force? And it's the fact that there are three parts that work completely independently. You have the mining, which is what Satoshi Nakamoto basically invented with proof of work, which is what makes these transactions decentralized. You run a computer, you try to find a math problem, and if you find it, you get rewarded with new Bitcoin that's valuable. So you have the mining operation. You have the core developers, which are building the code that the miners run. And they can add new changes to that code, or they can fix bugs in that code to make sure that Bitcoin is functioning. And Bitcoin's runtime, Bitcoin's been around for 10 years. It's been functioning 99.999% of the time.
Non-stop.
Your Bitcoin transaction always works. Like, it doesn't go down. I'm a YouTuber. 3 times a year I go to YouTube and YouTube's down. I've never seen Bitcoin down in my life since 2013 when I got involved. And so that's two. And the third one are those power users. Those are the node operators. Now, there are different types of nodes. You can say there are mining nodes. Originally, every node was also a miner. That's not true today because mining became very specialized. There are economic nodes where you have a company like Coinbase or a wallet like blockchain.info, and where you have a company that's responsible for, let's say, 100,000 users. So they're considered an economic node. They're still just one node. There's still one vote, but they have a vote for 100,000 people that use their product.
Right.
But it's still one node.
Yeah.
My one node counts as much as their one node, but they're responsible for 100,000 people. I'm only responsible for me. And most of the nodes are the power users of Bitcoin. And prior to that user-activated soft fork, the world didn't realize how powerful these individual users like myself are.
Yeah.
Because the mining, 90% of the miners and 90% of the economic nodes didn't want a piece of code upgrade that was going to make transactions faster and cheaper, because they are corporations and they don't want decentralization. They want centralization. They want, like any corporation, you want to have the government help you.
Yeah.
Or you want to be the government. You want to centralize. You're a corporation. You want monopoly.
You want to bring more under your remit. Yeah.
So the economic nodes and the miners said, well, we're not doing this. We're going to do something else. And the users said no. And that's never been done before. And it was a little scary. It was like, all right, fine. We don't need miners, big corporations. You're going to do what the users want. And that's what the user-activated soft fork did. And it worked. And the users won.
And how did they win? So they don't obviously have the mining power. They're not the ones validating the transactions. But by simply running a node, what was it that they did that caused this?
Basically, there was a new code change that was several years in the making. And the developers that were making that code change were under the impression that everyone wanted it. They had no idea that last minute, the miners and the corporations are going to have demands to get this code in. And those demands were unreasonable. They were something that the users wouldn't want. And they refused to adopt the code change. And the users basically said, we're putting in this code change. And it's not easy getting users to agree to anything, but this was pretty unanimous by power users that understood Bitcoin. And they basically said, as of this date, we're only going to accept Bitcoin that is being mined by the new changes in the code.
Right.
You don't have to use those changes, but if you're mining for the miners, you can still mine the other stuff. You can mine the old way, but we're not going to accept it. And we're only going to accept the new one. And we, as users, were willing to take a risk of losing 90% of mining hash power. Potentially, if 90% of hash power is lost, your transaction is now not going to take an average of 10 minutes to go through. It's probably going to take hours.
Yeah.
Hours and hours. And that will take months before the code kind of adjusts and drops the difficulty to make it faster again. We were willing to take that risk because we knew what was the right future path for Bitcoin to keep it decentralized. And the users basically said miners have to do this. Now the economic nodes, they didn't have to, and a lot of them still don't. Like some of them still refuse to adopt the new code changes. So they continue to make Bitcoin transactions a little slow, a little more expensive, but Bitcoin's not that slow right now. It's not that expensive. Yeah. It's not, the blocks are not that congested. The new code change made it so much harder to spam the blockchain to make it slow and expensive. And the miners caved. The miners had no choice. The miners said, all right, fine, we're going to mine what the users want.
If they want to make money.
If they want to make money, right.
Yeah.
Because the mistake was, the miners, they thought they had a vote in the future of Bitcoin. They actually don't. Like, we respect the miners. We respect the fact that people have invested millions and millions and millions of dollars to help support the Bitcoin network. But at the end of the day, they're supposed to be just a computer, not an AI smart computer, but an old school, like, dumb computer.
Dumb computer just does its job.
Does its job.
A bit of money.
Right, and you get rewarded very heavily to the tune of $18 million a day for doing that job right now. Because every 10 minutes, some miner finds a Bitcoin block. That block has 12.5 Bitcoins. One Bitcoin is worth $8,500. Do the math. Miners collectively around the world earn $18 million a day. And all they have to do is keep the machine running with electricity.
Yeah, and keep the community happy.
Right. Let the users and the developers, the smart people in the room, decide the future direction, because you're still a corporation and your job is to make more money and to centralize the network as much as possible. You don't care about decentralization. So that's our job.
I think that puts us on a lot of, interesting topics. One of them might be that after this 4-year debate, user-activated soft fork, we showed the world that it wasn't just devs and miners that could decide the direction. And so we'd proved that the decentralization for Bitcoin wasn't just those two parties. There was other, merchants and retail users that could have a say. Once we saw the fork of Bitcoin Cash and the SegWit was basically locked in, that pretty much started the next bull market, right?
The bull market had already started a little bit before that. In fact, so many people were scared of this user-activated soft fork and the hard fork that came after, and then there was supposed to be another hard fork that got canceled, and all throughout that fear, market kept rising and rising and rising. And me as a technical analyst, I was bullish the whole time because the charts told me to be confident and stay bullish.
Yeah.
Charts have not been telling me that the last couple of years, and so markets tend to do that. How many people always think the stock markets are about to crash? How many people always think the real estate's too expensive, especially here in Australia? And what happens? It just goes higher and higher and higher.
Yep.
Eventually it ends, but the bull market started regardless, and it was just its time. News doesn't affect markets. It just doesn't. News can affect market in the short term, but not in the long term. There are much bigger economic waves at stake. It was just Bitcoin's time to rise.
Yeah, I think so. We spoke about how much money the miners can make right now, but upcoming in May we have the halving, and I think that's like a global topic for the whole crypto space because everyone's looking at these things like Plan B's stock to flow model and saying like this is a guarantee. I think you have a view on that, but also more broadly, how do you see things going in the next maybe short term before the halving, after the halving? Will we see Plan B stock to flow model succeed?
Yeah, so the first time I heard about the stock to flow model and ratio was by reading Saifedean's The Bitcoin Standard, where he talked about gold. Right now, gold still has the best stock to flow, where the percentage of new gold entering the world economy is a tiny percentage of the amount of gold in circulation. And in about 2 years from now, Bitcoin will probably pass it, which means that it will be an asset around the world that's relevant. I'm sure there are altcoins that are not relevant, but Bitcoin will be a relevant asset around the world that has the smallest amount of new Bitcoins entering the world economy compared to the current Bitcoin in circulation. And some people, like Plan B on Twitter, have designed a model for that to try and predict the price of Bitcoin or where it's going to be based on this stock to flow ratio. My, I guess, short answer to it, I have never seen any model in finance and trading that doesn't break down. So
sooner or later
they all break down. There's no such thing as making perpetual money. So I still think the Bitcoin, I'm still a little concerned about the price of Bitcoin. So according to that stock to flow model, I haven't paid too close attention to it, but I think it's calling for something like $100,000 Bitcoin within the next 18 months or something.
It's roughly
less than 2 years for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little too optimistic. I am not looking at it that way. I still think that Bitcoin is going to struggle a little bit. I think that we got way out of control in 2017 and got way too high. I actually felt that Bitcoin should have gone a little lower than 3,000 when it bottomed out at 3,000 in December of last year. Actually 2 years ago now. December of 2018 going into 2019. 2019 has been a very interesting year. In 2019, we moved from about 4,000 up to 14. Then we fell all the way to 65. And now we're sitting here around 8,500 going into the halving. So we've had two prior examples of the halving, which is where new Bitcoin production gets cut in half. And both of those times, within 6 months, Bitcoin started to rise very, very sharply. I think this year is a little bit different. I think we're still recovering. I still think Bitcoin isn't very relevant around the world. I think Bitcoin hype was much bigger a few years ago than it is now.
Yeah.
And I still think there's going to be a little more pain. I'm expecting consolidation the rest of the year. I'm not expecting, maybe we'll cross the $10,000 mark at the end of the year. But I'm expecting the majority of this year to stay below 10,000. Of course, it doesn't have to. We can go to 100,000 tomorrow. It is, after all, Bitcoin.
Yeah.
This is why I'm wearing a HODL shirt. So you do want to hold on for dear life to your Bitcoin and know where your private keys are, which is what most of us should be doing. Dollar cost average is another decent strategy. Personally, I think that stock to flow model is gonna break down. I think that it's a lot harder to move Bitcoin 10x to the upside when the market cap is high.
Yeah.
It's challenging, and I think Bitcoin will eventually hit 100,000, but probably closer to the next halving, not this one.
That sounds... I tend to agree in a lot of ways. I think also in the past we've had things like the end of that 4-year scaling debate in a good market and a lot of retail hype. Right now, undeniable, there's less retail interest. But one thing that has grown is like institutional interest. And so my kind of gut feel is that they are going to play a much larger role in any chance we have at going into a bull market. And they don't care what the retail hype is. So I think they'll mark that one in.
That's true, but institutions are also pretty smart.
Yeah.
And they have the resources to keep Bitcoin down while they get in.
Right.
So you can also play those kinds of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
We also don't know what the government's going to say. Institutional side might be getting into the market. I told the U.S. government, the wrong guy gets elected, and all of a sudden he starts a war on Bitcoin, declares Bitcoin illegal, and now every institution has to immediately sell. What happens to the price then?
Yeah, that would be painful. I'm hoping that they just pay attention to the Facebook Libra instead. That's
true. And also with these large corporations getting involved in Bitcoin, they could, lobby the politicians and say, hey, no, we need this thing. It's good. It's going to be good for the economy. It's going to be good for jobs. It's going to be good, hey, maybe the Federal Reserve should invest in some. Maybe we can pay off the debt. So we'll see what happens. There's really a lot of uncertainties. And if you don't have any Bitcoin, deciding to buy that first Bitcoin will probably be one of your hardest financial decisions you have ever made in your life. But once you buy that Bitcoin and you learn how to properly protect it,
you just hold on to
and
it.
you hold on to it for like a good 6 months to a year while reading and learning about what you're actually holding and why you're holding it, you'll be fine.
What would you say for a country that considers, because they obviously can't stop people using Bitcoin, but they can regulate and come down on business entities doing it. What would a country that makes that decision to clamp down, what are they risking in terms of not just the short-term impact on price or anything, but as a country, are they, it's a balance of regulation versus innovation, right?
I guess the simplest answer, in the short term, what they're risking is young, I don't want to use the word rich, but young, resourceful entrepreneurs. That's what they're risking. They're risking someone with resources to start jobs and maybe build the next Google.
Right.
Out of your country. That's what they're risking. So one of the reasons why the U.S. continues to be a global superpower is because the big internet corporations are in the US. Facebook, Google, Amazon. I mean, China is competing with their versions, but those versions aren't global. Those versions are local to China. And one of the only reasons why they're even off the ground is because China blocked the US internet corporations. So if Bitcoin is the next fundamental layer of financial technology, we call it fintech. If Bitcoin is the next layer of fintech, the global region that is open-minded to allowing that layer of financial technology to underlie its economy, that could be the next superpower for the next 100 years. So a country like the US is missing a lot because if they shut the door to Bitcoin, but I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, generally there's more freedom in the US than, say, Russia or China. It's really hard to find a small nation, though looking back, the UK is not a big country, but they owned like half the world at one point. The Netherlands, France, Portugal, they all had their, their currency, their nation be the global reserve currency for 50 plus years. So it's possible that a small region, even like a Japan, in the 80s, Japan was the second biggest economy in the world. Second biggest economy, little island.
That's correct. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were the second biggest economy in the world. Little island, no natural resources, but that's because that's where all the innovation was. That's where all the engineering was. I mean, they ran into other problems. The markets got overheated, and but it's possible for a small country, landmass-wise, like Japan, to be the world leader for a 50-year stretch from, say, 2030 to 2080, because they opened up to Bitcoin. And I'm specifically saying Bitcoin because I think almost everything else in the space is a scam. They took in the millionaires and soon-to-be billionaires into their country and allowed them to use that money to hire the smartest people and build the next great products. That's the kind of person that you want to attract. You want to attract not necessarily the lucky ones with money, but you want to attract the smart people that are still hungry to build something. And the nation that attracts the most number of these people is the nation that's going to succeed. And I think Bitcoin is going to play a giant role in this. But here's the beauty of it. If you have the Bitcoin, my favorite property of Bitcoin is its unconfiscatability. And with the way the world is today, you don't need to work in an office. If you have Bitcoin, you can take that Bitcoin anywhere. Nobody can stop you. And you can go ahead and build your business anywhere you like. But you have to choose a country that's not going to then take away your business. So you have to take a country with good laws, good rule of law, good property rights, and good freedoms.
Yeah. So if you're a large country listening, please innovate with us. Otherwise, you're going to force everyone to leave and go to a smaller town. Probably a lot of attractiveness in that anyway. Nice little island somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like a lot of countries today, they want capital. They want money. That's why they sell you a passport. Like the European passport, like Malta, you can go and buy a passport for like $250,000. Now you're a European. Like, why do they do that?
Yeah.
They'll just sell you a passport. You buy a piece of real estate for, I think some countries up to $600,000. They want the money. Wouldn't you rather have the smart guy that's going to build a company than to just take the money and build a passport? But it's the same concept.
Yeah. Let's touch on altcoins. So obviously you've got a large range, and they vary in their attractiveness. You're a member. Is it a member of the Bitcoin Maximalist Club, you could say? And I think because I kind of consider myself most of the way there, but probably where I don't feel aligned under that banner is that I think like maximalism of any kind can lead to an ecosystem of perhaps intolerance or an unwelcoming kind of environment. And I think it's and I see it a lot of maximalist environments end up having a bit of like a religious kind of feel to them. for better or worse. And so I think we clearly have other altcoins or shitcoins that have talent in their communities. What would be, I guess, your thoughts on the best way that maximalists should approach trying to encourage them to come back to Bitcoin?
I don't want them back. I don't believe there's talent there at all. I believe they're just money hungry, and if talent's on Bitcoin, most talent is on Bitcoin. We just saw Bitcoin Cash announce that they're gonna pay developers by confiscating money from the miners. That announced this morning.
Yeah.
Calling people a Bitcoin maximalist is like calling people an internet maximalist.
Right.
There are competing internets. Well, wait, are there competing internets? If not, why not? Were there competing internets? There were. Like AOL tried to do their own thing, others tried to do their own thing. It's being what the term Bitcoin maximalist was used to demonize people that provide common sense reality. That at the end of this decade, the only blockchain that's going to matter economically is Bitcoin blockchain. The free market will choose the Bitcoin blockchain because it's the only one that's decentralized. It's the only one that is censorship resistant. It's the only one that has people voluntarily working on it. And it's just the reality of the situation. And a lot of the people that decided to promote their own monopoly money for their own personal interest, I don't care if they come back. They can come back. They don't have to come back. Bitcoin is not going to care. What happens is a lot of these people lie, steal, and cheat to promote their coin. I don't lie about Bitcoin, ever. But I constantly have to point out the lies in every single other coin and their promoters. Because Bitcoin is not a company. There's no talking points. And so I don't have respect for people that lie, steal, and cheat. So whether they come back or not, it's irrelevant. I can't stop them. Do I want them back? Not really. But at the end of the day, it's irrelevant. Bitcoin has no barriers. You want to come back, you can come back. You don't want to come back, you don't come back. And those that make the wrong choices, that use these altcoins, that get other people to invest in these altcoins, that convince people to build projects on top of these altcoins, they're only doing a disservice to basically the whole world. By getting something critical and useful built on an unstable layer, and then that unstable layer collapses, everyone gets hurt.
Yeah.
So I do my best to make sure people only save Bitcoin, only build their projects on top of Bitcoin. But clearly it's a million altcoins and one Bitcoin, right? So they all claim, well, we do this one thing better than Bitcoin.
Right.
Well, right, but what about the other 100 things, plus the most important thing, which is Bitcoin is decentralized and your project isn't.
Right.
You can claim that it is decentralized, but now you're lying. And when you're lying, I can't respect you anymore.
Okay. I find that really compelling. It's an interesting predicament because at the other hand, you've got these other projects. In a funny way, they're almost taking capital, learning what does and doesn't work, and then Bitcoin just can come in and go, thanks. Because it's like an example would be privacy. Privacy probably wouldn't be so high on the Bitcoin priority list to find a solution for had we not had other blockchains work out that there was demand for it by seeing a market value. But I think I do tend to agree with you that on a long enough timeline, Bitcoin can kind of just let these projects have that play, and maybe there's an opportunity in speculation during those periods. But I think, unless another project can provably come out with decentralization through some way we haven't thought of possible just yet, then I'm on
Right.
I'm on page.
And that's a chicken and an egg scenario.
Yeah.
You can't create decentralization because you want decentralization.
No.
Decentralization happens in the wild. And that's how Bitcoin got its decentralization. Because it just happened in the wild. Not because some guy paid enough money to a developer to create decentralization. That's not how decentralization comes into being. It happens naturally and organically. And nothing since Bitcoin had even come close.
Cool. All right. I think that's probably it for time. It was good to have you on the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fun. Where are you off to next?
I am off to Bali, but after Bali, I am going to head back to the United States for the Unconfiscatable conference. I love that word. I love the domain.
It is a good word.
That is Bitcoin's most important property for me.
Right.
Everyone has their own properties. For some people, it's the fact that Bitcoin is this hard money. For me, it's the fact that we now have an asset for the first time in human history that is truly unconfiscatable.
You can hodl it.
Just memorize your password, memorize your private key, and you're good to go. No one even has to know you have Bitcoin. And Unconfiscatable conference is going down in Las Vegas on February 22nd. And that's where I'll be spending a lot of my time during those like 2-3 weeks preparing and then after the event.
Cool. Unconfiscatable.com. Check it out. Thanks for coming on the show. It was good to catch up.
Thank you.